Welcome to Two Way tonight. I'm Mark Halperin. There's only one story on our program tonight, and one story really in most of the world, which is the extraordinary event that took place this afternoon in the Oval Office between President Zelensky, President Trump, and Vice President J.D. Vance. Probably a lot of you have seen it or seen clips of it. And if you're on social media, you're seeing lots of reaction to what occurred. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I think, just a little bit. Then I'm going to play the 5 minutes or so that are really at the heart of the extraordinary spectacle. Donald Trump said it would make great TV. It does make great TV, but it's got huge implications. Then we'll bring in our two guests, two national security experts, to talk to them about what happened and where they think this leaves the process, and talk a little bit about the reaction. Everyone with a point of view has a reaction to this all over the world on social media and television and elsewhere. So there's lots of reaction. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then I want to get a lot of your questions in. I prefer you not ask me that or raise anything besides this topic. If you've got your hand up and you want to talk about something else, come back tomorrow. On Monday rather. I just want to focus on this topic. So I'm asking everybody who'd like to raise their hand if you're on the two-way platform, focus on what happened today in the Oval Office, and we'll have the conversation about that. And if you're in the chat, here or on YouTube or X, please don't write things in the chat that violate our rules here about peace, love, and understanding the presumption of grace. I actually have seen less uncivil dialogue about this than usual. So a lot of disagreement about what happened, what it means, who's at fault, but people have not been getting personal that I've seen as compared to most issues. And as you know, this issue cuts across the normal red-blue divide because there are plenty of people in the Republican Party who have not appreciated or approved of President Trump's policies towards Ukraine and his statements about Ukraine. And there are plenty of Democrats who share President Trump's view that it's time for the United States to stop spending so much money there. There's so many ways to talk about this is unprecedented. These are the kinds of shouting matches and tense moments that occur in diplomacy all the time. It's just usually not in front of the cameras. And again, some of you will be familiar with this, but just to set the stage, they had a long meeting with the pool in there, and the pool was asking questions, and it was perfectly cordial. In fact, as cordial as we've seen between Zelensky and Trump, probably maybe ever. Axios is reporting that the president, people had asked Zelensky to wear a suit and tie rather than some version of his military garb. And he didn't. He wore kind of a dressier version of his military garb. But maybe that annoyed the president. But most people, including many people sympathetic to President Zelensky, are laying the blame for this at his feet. Even if they don't like what Trump and Vance say, they say Zelensky was a few minutes away from getting the minerals deal signed and having a press conference that would be cordial. The lunch was canceled. The press conference was canceled. The president, after the blow up, which again we'll see in a moment, the two parties went to separate rooms, and the Zelensky people said let's resume, and President Trump reportedly just said no, like leave the White House. Zelensky is supposedly doing an interview on Fox while we're on the air, and we're monitoring that. That'll be pretty interesting, and I'm surprised. I thought he would cancel. So
he's there. He's on the set with Brett. He's there.
No, I see it. I'm watching it out of the corner of my eye. So we'll monitor that. We'll dip in live as Noah says we need to. But let's get to quickly play number 10, please, Sam. This is the heart of the exchange. Right before the video starts, J.D. Vance talked about the importance of diplomacy in helping to settle the conflict.
What kind of diplomacy, J.D., you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you are not
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come to the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the President for trying to bring an end to this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Come once.
I've actually watched and seen the stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems? bringing people into your military?
we have
And do you think that it's
I
respectful
will answer.
to come to the Oval Office
I
of the
will
United
answer.
States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country?
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean and don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless.
You don't know
God
that.
bless. You
Don't-
will not
you
have
gotta-
a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because
I'm
you're in no
answering on this
position to
question.
dictate that.
That's
Remember
exactly what
this.
I'm not
You're in
dictating.
no position to dictate what we're going to feel.
You
We're
will-
going to feel very
you will
good.
feel influence.
We're going to feel
I'm-
very
I'm
good and
telling
very
you,
strong.
You will feel influence.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed
From the
yourself
very-
to be in a
from
very
the very
bad position,
beginning
and he
of the
happens
war.
to be right about
From
it.
the very beginning of the war.
You're not
Mr.
in a
Brown,
good position.
I
You don't
was
have
in
the cards right now. With us, you start
I'm
having
not playing
cards.
cards.
But right now, you
I'm
don't.
very
Yeah, you're playing
serious,
cards.
Mr. President.
You're
I'm
playing
very
cards.
serious.
You're gambling
I'm the
with the
president
lives
in
of
war.
millions of people.
You think-
You're
you-
gambling with World War
What do you-
III.
what do you
You're
think about?
gambling with
What do you
World
think
War
about?
III. And
You-
what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country.
I'm-
That's
with
back
all
to
respect to
you.
your
Far
country.
more than a lot of people said
very
they
respect.
should have.
Have you said thank you once?
A
This
lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
have you said thank
Even
you?
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for
What-
the United
what
States
you're
of
speaking
America
about?
and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country is
Can I-
in big
can-
trouble.
can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this. You have a damn
We-
good chance of
we are
coming out
staying,
okay because of
Mr.
us.
President, we are staying in our country, staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet,
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said thank
stupid
you.
president, $350 billion.
You voted
we gave
for
you
your
military
president.
equipment,
You
and you
voted
men
for
are
your
brave,
president.
but they had to use our military.
What about
if,
West
if you didn't have
You
our
invited
military
me-
equipment,
you invited
if
me
you
to
didn't
speak-
have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3
okay?
days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of
except
times
that
thank
there-
you
except
to
that-
American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on out here. I think it's very important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't, please,
you're running
Mr.
low on
President.
soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then
President.
then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're saying you don't want a ceasefire.
But I said to you,
I want a ceasefire.
with guarantees.
Because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
that
what
wasn't
this
with me.
nation- it
That was
wasn't
with
with
a
you.
guy named Biden, who was not a smart person.
But this
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be more thankful, because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
Want to know next steps. We have to be very open to understand how to stop the war.
Right.
This is
But do
live
you
right now.
think
This is
the
Zelensky on
public
Fox. We'll
spat
watch a little bit
in
of
the
this.
Oval Office in front of the media served Ukrainians well today?
I think this kind of spat is I mean this we have. I mean, this is not good for both sides anyway, and I very open, but I can't, change our Ukrainian attitude to Russia, and I don't want they kill us for us. This is very, very clear that Americans are the best of our friends, Europeans are the best of our friends, and Putin with Russian, their enemies. And it doesn't mean that we don't want peace. We just want to recognize the reality, the real situation.
President Trump is convinced that you will never sign a deal with Vladimir Putin. Is he right?
No, I think so. What I think, Ukraine wants peace, and we will have anyway diplomacy. We will have negotiations. I only said that I think so. It's about just and lasting peace. It meant that we have to be very strong at the table of negotiations, and at these negotiations, Ukraine and Russia, like sides of this war, have to be, and the United States and Europe. That's what I said.
Sam, let's take this down. You guys keep watching.
For peace,
we'll bring it back in as we need to. So President Trump just spoke not that long ago. He's flying to Mar-a-Lago. He talked to reporters at the White House before he got on the helicopter, repeated a lot of what he put on Truth Social earlier today, that he wants a ceasefire, that Zelensky doesn't, and that Zelensky isn't worth talking to until he wants a ceasefire and he's serious about an agreement. The president was asked, are you considering cutting off military aid to Ukraine? And Trump wouldn't answer. The whole thing is quite complicated. There's so much reaction, and we could show you a reaction all night, but I want to bring in our guest in just a minute. But here's Lindsey Graham. This to me is significant because Lindsey Graham has been as steadfast a supporter for Ukraine as anyone in the country, to believe that the war must be won and Putin must be defeated. Here's Lindsey Graham, number 7, please, responding to what Trump and Van Sciglio offered.
Trump I talked to last night, he was upbeat about the deal. I've never been more proud of President Trump for showing the American people and the world you don't trifle with this man. He was very positive. He was very upbeat. He wanted to get a ceasefire. He wants to end the war. And Zelensky felt like he needed to bait Trump in the Oval Office. JD was awesome. This was a missed opportunity. And the question for me, for the Ukrainian people, I don't know if Zelensky can ever get you to where you want to go with the United States. Either he dramatically changes or you need to get somebody new.
This is the big thing about the question of whether Zelensky should remain in power. The Russians want a new election. This is now a talking point espoused by one of Zelensky's biggest American supporters. So, as President Trump said, this is a good television. It is. And it's extraordinary. And if you're into history or diplomacy, it's great. But it's also extremely important for what's going to happen in Europe, in Ukraine, with the relationship with Russia. So we want to get tons of you in tonight. So I'm glad to see so many hands up. Please raise your hand if you're here on the two-way platform if you want to get in to the conversation, and we'll get to your questions sooner than we normally do. Our two guests tonight, Cliff May is president of and founder of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. He's someone who's been involved in thinking about and writing about and talking about American security and policy and the politics of that for a long time. Cliff, thank you for joining.
Thank you,
Dr. Mark Halperin has served in senior positions at the Pentagon, the National Security Council, and the State Department, where he was, amongst other things, the head of policy planning. And Gad, thank you for joining as well.
My pleasure.
All right. So there's so many elements to this. Cliff, let's just start. I want to hear from both of you. How do you read what happened in that room? Was Zelensky trying to do something? Was Trump and Vance trying to do something? Or do you think it just happened organically and now we're picking up the pieces?
Well, okay, I say this as somebody who admires Zelensky, but I think his job today was very simple and he made it complex. His job was to get a signature on an economic agreement that would give the United States a stake literally in the soil of his country. That's all he had to do. He objects to the fact that President Trump is acting sort of like a referee in a prize fight and says, you're in that corner, you're in that corner, I'm going to play by the rules. Zelensky's not wrong to believe we're the prey. Putin is the predator. Why aren't you showing that? But I also understand, as Zelensky should have understood, that President Trump thinks this is the way he gets to a deal. And I think it went badly, and it needs to get back on track. The last thing that is good, not just for Ukraine, but for the U.S., would be for Putin to conquer Ukraine, because he will not stop there. He will use the combatants with a bayonet to their back and march them towards the NATO members. How that gets done, Whether they can be done by Zelensky, I don't know. But we're in a bad moment. It shouldn't have happened. And Zelensky just look, he's been under tremendous stress for 3 years, but he had a diplomatic job to do that he didn't get done.
Dad, do you see in that room something that's got any historical analog, or is this something unlike we've ever seen?
Well, there isn't. I think there isn't any historical analog since World War II or maybe World War One of the United States positioning itself as a neutral observer of a conflict between two other countries, and basically saying both of you have to do whatever produces peace, regardless of the merits, regardless of the consequences for the future. And I think Zelensky didn't want this agreement. He was saying, in effect, I'm not signing away my minerals, which is the only thing, as you keep pointing out to me, that I have left, unless I get a commitment from you that you will make a security commitment to Ukraine for in case of Putin keeps going or keeps going again 6 months or 8 months later, as he's done every time in the past. And also saying that Trump will decide what the deal is and impose it on Zelensky rather than having him at the table. So I think he was saying, I'm not doing the one deal that I do control until we have agreement on the rest of the package or how we're going to proceed with the rest of the package. And I think it's a disgrace that the United States is taking this position, given the situation that Ukraine is in, given how it got in that situation, and given that we have longstanding commitments to the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Right. As always, you two should, if you want to ask each other questions, jump in. Feel free. Don't wait to be called on.
Let me say that.
Let
me say, I don't,
yeah.
I would like to see, as I think Mort would, Putin absolutely defeated and Ukraine absolutely victorious. But do I think that's realistic at this moment? I don't. What I want to see at this moment that's realistic is the maintenance of the sovereignty and independence of Ukraine on as much of its territory as possible. I think Zelensky would have been well advised. I suspect he was advised by people like Lindsey Graham. Take this agreement, gives the U.S. an economic stake in Ukraine, and then go from there. Security guarantees on paper are maybe a little bit overrated. Consider we have the Budapest Memo of 1994. What does it say? Ukraine gives up its nuclear weapons in exchange. Russia, U.S., Britain make a commitment to the territorial integrity of Ukraine. But it wasn't a treaty. It didn't say how it would be enforced. I think Zelensky is making a mistake to think what he needs is a signature on a piece of paper. I'd like to see him in NATO, be a great force in NATO. I don't think that's likely. So I think at this point, he should have taken this agreement. That would have been smart, bit his tongue and gone on, and then worked on. And then if you had European peacekeepers in Ukraine on the ground, that would be a sort of tripwire and a better security guarantee, as well as U.S. businessmen and miners on the ground. I think you have to be realistic about this a little bit, even though I'm 100% with Mort about what the justice would be. There's also what you can get done.
But what he can get done depends on what Trump is prepared to do. The Russians can't stop Trump from adding to the agreement that we will defend the territorial integrity of Ukraine beyond the borders that agreed, that we will intervene if Putin breaks the ceasefire. That is not for Putin to decide. It is for the American people to decide and the American government to decide. And I think Zelensky must have concluded, as I think anybody would listening to Trump talk today, that Trump was not going to give him any of that. And that you say he should sign the agreement and then move on. But I think when he signs the agreement, he gives up the only leverage he now has. And
he doesn't have any leverage now, Mort. That now he just lost his leverage. And I'm very worried that this will be a kind of Afghanistan for the U.S. in that if Putin says, okay, now I don't have to worry about killing American miners. I don't have to worry about killing European peacekeepers. I can do whatever I want to do. I suspect that Putin wants a pause, not peace. I don't think Putin ever wants peace. Zelensky is right about that. But he may want to pause because his economy is in bad shape. His military is moving inches at great cost in lives. Not that Putin cares a lot about Russian lives. He may want to pause. When he gets that pause, will he try to build back his military better? Possibly, but then that's the time to give Ukraine the deterrent capabilities it didn't have 3 years ago. Ukraine could use a pause as well at this point. Again, I'm not a realist school guy, but I do think that having if Trump had said to Putin, I've now got an interest, and it's the natural resources, untapped by the way, of Ukraine, and they're going to use that to buy weapons from me. I need you, Putin. Now I've been flattering to you. I've been nice to you. I haven't made you look like a loser. I've been good to you, but now you got to say you're going to go for a ceasefire, and then we'll talk from there about lifting sanctions on you. Maybe you want that. Maybe we can get you back in the G8. Maybe you want that. But you're going to cease firing because I said you would, and now you will.
But
Again,
ceasefire,
Trump is a deal maker, not a diplomat, and not a political thinker.
yeah, but that's the problem. I mean,
Well, I'm not sure, because the
a
political
ceasefire
thinkers
is not
haven't
a-
succeeded in Afghanistan, in Iraq. They haven't succeeded over and over again. This was true. It was true that this was the card Zelensky had to play, and he did, and he folded instead. And unless somebody can get the relationship between Ukraine and U.S. back on track, Ukraine's in bad shape, and that's bad for the U.S. and good for Russia. And
well, I agree with that, but I don't think
Cliff, are you able to hear me? Cliff,
what he did was
hold on, Cliff, are you able to hear me?
I'm hearing you now. Yeah. Are you not hearing me? I hear you.
Okay. I do. Do you have a history with Russia and Putin?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I started going to Russia when I was a teenager more than 50 years ago, and I've been kind of an amateur Putinologist for the past 20 years.
So tell us what you think Putin thinks looking at what happened today.
I think Putin thinks I'm winning now. I've got it. All I need is for the U.S. to stop supplying military munitions to Ukraine, and I can ratchet up and I can achieve my aim. Putin is a czar. That's how he sees himself. His goal is to restore the Russian Empire. He cannot be pried away from Xi Jinping and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei in Tehran. That's an axis of aggressors. That cannot be done. Putin wants all of Ukraine. If he has to settle for less, it's a failure for him. He wants to restore, he wants to be czar of all the Russias. That means Belarus, which is a vassal state, and it means Ukraine most of all. He wants 40 million additional Russians. That's why he has stolen 20,000 Ukrainian children, and he is brainwashing them to believe and to grow up to be Russians. And he wants that military, that Ukrainian military, so he can put bayonets in their backs and march them towards Moldova, possibly not a part of NATO, but also towards, I would say, Lithuania, Estonia, and Latvia.
Lauren, come on in. Tell us what's on your mind, Lauren. Go ahead.
Hi. Yeah, national security is like my biggest passion. So, and I love the FDD, Cliff. So it's really cool that you're on here. Yeah. So I guess I just kind of wanted to share my thoughts and then maybe ask like a kind of quick but broad question. So I first just wanted to like point out that we're not being entirely neutral. You know, Trump is trying to portray that we are neutral in these negotiations because he thinks that that's what would be best to get a deal with Putin. We don't know. What we do know is Obama sure never got a deal, didn't do anything militarily. Biden didn't get a deal, didn't give Ukraine enough weapons in the beginning to, you know, be able to stave it off more. But we're not neutral. I mean, Trump even reiterated twice during the press conference today that, yes, we will continue giving aid to Ukraine. And I'm just so I was disgusted by Trump's remarks. I think it was last week, calling him a dictator. So I'm not like a Trump apologist or anything like that, but I'm just like so blown away by the reaction by the media and a lot of the Democrats, because I don't understand how you could watch the first 30 minutes before it got contentious at all. Okay. Zelensky was sitting there. I don't care if he's not in a suit. And Trump defended Zelensky when a stupid reporter like asked some question to Zelensky about not wearing a suit. Trump was like, I think he looks great, you know, in his usual laughing mode. But Zelensky for the first 30 minutes was rolling his eyes, putting his hands up in exasperation, shaking his head. And I understand why, right? Like I feel for Zelensky so much, but that is so disrespectful. And Trump wasn't reacting at all. He's sitting there, you know, he wants to get this deal done. So just the way that Zelensky behaved that during those first 30 minutes and then, you know, butting into the vice president to try to argue in front of the cameras, I find as an American so disrespectful.
Right. So Lauren, thank you for that. I want Cliff and more to respond. I blame them all in the sense that they're all responsible adults. They all have something. But it seemed to me there's no doubt just from watching it as a human drama that Zelensky really did a lot of things to set them off. And he's right. He's here asking for the help. Yes, he doesn't love the deal, but Dad, don't you think history is going to record, as Cliff suggested, that this was Zelensky's failure?
No, I think
primarily.
Trump told us that he set him up. Remember, he said when the vice president suggested that this should not happen in public, he said, "No, I got to go because I thought this would happen and I wanted people to see it." And
He
I
didn't
think
say I thought this would happen. He didn't say I thought this happened. He said it's people should see this.
see
I
the controversy. Oh, I think he did say that he thought they should see the disagreement and the disrespect.
Yeah.
The most
Yes.
important thing
Yes.
to him was that Zelensky was not respectful of him, and he wanted the American people to see
let
that.
me challenge your premise though. If you're right, what does Trump get out of this? Why is this better for Trump?
Because he wants Zelensky to bend the knee and kiss his hand like everybody else has done.
Yeah.
And he think
You know what? Mort, that's absolute. That is true, and in a way, that's what you got to do. To look at the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He came in and he was so deferential, right? So deferential, and he had to be. I think Lauren's points are also good. Two things that I thought of. One was Lindsey Graham saying, "Look, I advised him don't take the bait. I advised Zelensky don't take the bait, and he did." And the second thing that was a clue to me, I was watching it, and if you look carefully, you'll see the Ukrainian ambassador. I know her. I like her, bright woman. She at one point that's right. She puts her heads in it. She knows it's going off the rails. This is not the way to handle it. She knows that Zelensky, again, a man I admire, he's making a mistake because his job here is to be deferential if you need to be, get an agreement going, and also make sure that you keep Trump on side. Privately, you can say, let me just tell you what I know. And this is my column last week in the Washington Times. Let me tell you what I know about Putin and his record going back 20 years to when he razed Grozny to the ground, killed 100,000 Chechens. How many of his critics he has assassinated on the streets of Moscow and in the streets and in a hotel in London? We know this. I don't know that Trump has a clear idea of who Putin is, but that to do this in front of the cameras, he should have just, again, bit his lip, twiddled his thumbs and said, "Thank you, sir. Thank you to the Americans. What will we do without you? We need you badly." And that's what he should be doing right now.
I agree. Lauren, thank you. The big thing so far in the Fox interview is Brett asked him if he thought he should apologize to President Trump, and he said no. He said he's not going to apologize. So that's going to get a lot of attention and be noticed at the White House. All right, more folks coming in. Mike, welcome in. Unmute. Tell folks where you are, what's on your mind, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so thank you guys for doing this. I mean, my thought on this was like, we're kind of saying Zelensky had failed. And I actually think Zelensky had a different goal than to come out of that meeting with an agreement with the US. Like, we're sort of assuming the world looks at, like, the world is the same now that it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I don't know that, like, if you're a European right now, and with Vance showing up at the Munich Security Conference or Trump talking about 25% tariffs, like, that is the right underlying framework to assess how to interact and how to defend yourselves. And I actually wonder if, like, how long is it going to be before the Europeans seize the Russian assets that are frozen? I know it comes with things, but if somebody called up Zelensky like yesterday and said, "Look, you don't need to take this deal. We've got your back," it actually, I mean, I see you shaking your head, but I don't think it's as straightforward as like the U.S. is the backstop. And I think where Trump and Vance are actually misplaying things is like they look at their relationships with everyone as like predators. And it's like the world's more complicated. Like, so anyway, I think what Zelensky did, it may have been the wrong decision, but it was a premeditated decision. And he, achieved whatever his near-term goal was.
Mike, thank you for that. Dad, do you think it was premeditated?
No, I don't think so at all. I think he got goaded into it. But I think the fundamental point is that he did not want to take the agreement before he got the American commitments to a security commitment, the
Right.
return of the babies, the return of the prisoners. And he was saying, I lose all my leverage once I sign the agreement, and therefore I don't want to sign it. He should not have been goaded. But look at what we're saying. We're saying that a leader of a small country under Russian attack is responsible for being goaded by the president of the United States, who set out to goad him in order to get him to bow and say, we thank you very much for what you're doing to me. And that's, both are at charge. Zelensky's obligation to his own country suggested that he should have resisted. But you can imagine how difficult that was for him, given that he was in the situation where he just didn't want the deal and thinks, I think correctly, that once he gives up and signs the deal, he's lost all his leverage on those other issues.
Right. But hold on one second. The White House said last night to the press, this deal's done. And he's not coming to negotiate. He's just coming to sign it. But
Right.
I don't believe that that's true. Cliff.
Oh, I think it's true because the other things wouldn't be in this deal. The things that he wants.
Well, that's what I mean is the deal was done, but Zelensky was going to make points to say, I have other things I want to talk about. The deal
Zelensky
itself was
saying, I'm ready to sign the deal, but there has to be other things that we agree to at the same
Right.
time.
Right.
That's not, that happens
Yes.
all the time.
Well,
Yes.
I'm going to make this simpler. What Putin wants is to destroy Ukraine as a political entity and even as a culture. That's what he wants to do. It is absolutely genocidal in that sense. It seems to me when you're under that kind of threat, the most important thing you need is to have America on your side, sending you weapons that you can use. Part of the problem is that the weapons that came out under Biden, and they did, were kind of dribs and drabs. It helped them not to lose, but wouldn't let them succeed. You can't have ATACMS. Well, you can't have ATACMS, but only this range. It wasn't enough. But the most important thing for Zelensky, maybe he didn't see it this way, you want to keep Trump and the Americans on side, keep the weapons flowing. And if you have to promise untapped natural resources to do that, it's a bargain.
But isn't the point, to me, the point is Trump has signaled publicly and privately, I'm going to give Putin more land than Zelensky is comfortable with, and I'm going to give him fewer security assurances than he's comfortable. And that's an unsplittable baby because Trump's not going to move Putin on those things. Trump's going to get a better deal for Zelensky than Zelensky can get for himself.
That's right.
But
that's right.
It's just we don't know exactly how much land, and we know exactly what security assurances, but they're far short of what Zelensky's comfortable with.
Two historical analogies.
Sorry. Before you do that, so when Trump says he doesn't want peace, Trump's view is if you want peace, you're going to have to give it the program on security assurances and land. That's Trump's view, and this guy showed up and he wasn't on board for that.
I think you're exactly right, Mark. I'm not saying, but I do think you're right. And I think there are two historical analogies. I'll give you real quick. One is South Korea. We have 28,000 troops in South Korea. We have them there since 1953. We're not going to send American troops. We could have British troops. What does that mean? South Korea is chronically threatened by North Korea, but not imminently threatened. And it's developed very nicely. It's got a great economy. It's got a democracy. That's one. The other analogy, less well known, the 1939 war, the Winter War that the Soviet Union fought to drag Finland back into the Soviet Empire. Nobody helped. Nobody helped Finland. They fought like crazy. And how did it end? Finland lost 11% of its territory, retained its independence, and 2 years ago, guess what? It finally joined NATO. That's the other historical example, I would say. So if Ukraine were to lose 20% even of its territory, when including Crimea, but retain its independence, maybe 10 years from now, Putin is dead and there's a new regime and it falls apart and the Ukrainian military, which is real strong, goes back in. That's not an ideal outcome. It's not the outcome I want, you want, or Mort wants. I'd like to see Putin defeated, but it's not a bad outcome. It's a better outcome than I fear right now.
I totally agree with that. And I look at what France and the UK and even Germany have done and say they're getting with the program. They're understanding they're going to have to carry some of the weight. Rachel, come on and tell folks where you are who don't know and what's on your mind.
I'm in Southern California, and I have two questions. One is for Cliff May. I feel like what you're saying is, oh, Zelensky should have given, I agree with Morton Halperin. You're saying he should give up his one point of leverage and trust that Trump's going to protect them. Trump was not willing to give him any security guarantees. So why should he? Trump is not the most trustworthy person. I think most people would agree based on his business history. Why should he trust him? So that's my question for you. And my question for you, Mark, is every day I watch your show and I'm aggravated because I feel like you and Dan feel like Trump's playing some genius three-dimensional chess game. And do you still believe that? And I'm very upset about everything that's going on. So excuse my emotion.
Yeah. You mean on this issue in particular?
On the whole Ukraine thing. And the last thing is, why doesn't Trump realize that he acts like we're doing Ukraine a big favor. It is helpful to us to not have Russian aggression in Europe. I don't understand why he doesn't see that. So I guess I had three questions and I'm sorry.
Okay. Dad, you want to take the first one? Then Cliff, and then I'll go the second.
Sorry, which was the first one?
The first one is, why should Cliff May is saying he should have signed over the minerals, and then he could get. I mean, we all know Putin's going to break the ceasefire, but why should he give that up?
Was that for Cliff?
That was me.
No,
Okay,
that
so
was for you, right? That was
okay,
the first
sorry.
question.
so the
Okay,
mineral,
sorry, go ahead.
the minerals are in the ground. Once the minerals, some share of them become Trump's, Trump wants to protect those minerals, wants to protect that deal, wants to protect that benefit. As Lindsey Graham said, once this deal is made, Trump can say to, among others, his base, look at this. Ukraine's no longer a burden. It's now a benefit, and I have a reason to protect it. And once you get peacekeepers there from, say, Britain, from, say, France, not from the U.S., once you begin to exploit, and by the way, just so we know, it's not so easy to exploit rare earths and lithium and all that stuff. It takes years. Mining is very difficult. There's all kinds of complications to it. It's not going to be a huge economic benefit anytime soon, but it allows
All the
Trump
more
to
reason
say,
not to not to trust Trump, because if it's
No,
not even
because-
that great.
Listen, Rachel, think of it this way. The last thing we want is for Russia to be exploiting those minerals and sending them to China. If the U.S. and Ukraine have an economic partnership, then the U.S. has a national interest, one that Trump will perceive, for protecting the wealth that he now has in Ukraine. And by the way, then Zelensky also has now revenue coming from this to buy the weapons he needs, and he needs many hundreds of billions of dollars worth of weapons to have a deterrent capability against Russia now and going into the future. Absolutely vital that he can do that. And how can he do that? He's not going to try. Listen, Trump was not correct on how much we've spent. We spent maybe 160 billion, not like 300. It's like less than 3% of our defense budget. It's the best return on investment we have gotten in terms of defense, because it is being used not by Americans but by Ukrainians, risking and giving up their lives to deteriorate the military strength of our number two adversary. I'm absolutely with you. I'm absolutely with Mort that this is a good investment that we should make. But if you want to make sure this investment lasts into the future, set up a formal economic relationship where America absolutely benefits from Ukrainian independence. And Trump can say, you see that I made the deal nobody else could make.
Dad, before you respond, Zelensky said to Brett that he would not enter into peace talks until he has security assurances. And that's, I think, the heart of his disagreement with Trump. Because Trump won't give him the security assurances except as part of the peace talks. Then respond to Rachel and Cliff, if you would.
Well, I don't think he'll give them assurances, even if they do. Trump also made it clear that he was neutral about this. He didn't understand that the Russian position poses a threat to the United States, to our allies in Europe, to the neutral countries in Europe, and to any conception of maintaining peace in Europe in the future. And I think that's what the troubling part of this is, that Trump positioned himself as neutral between the country that committed the aggression and that is refusing to stop, and the country that is ready to stop and was the subject of aggression.
Yeah,
So
Rachel, the answer to your question to me is the same today as it was before today's extraordinary events. If Trump gets a deal that secures Ukraine, secures the rest of Europe, makes it difficult for Putin to take more land anywhere that he doesn't currently occupy after the agreement, I'll think he's a mastermind. And if he ends up agreeing to a deal that falls short of that, I'll think it's one of the great historical blunders and immoral acts of diplomacy ever. But Rachel, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were never going to end the war. They never were going to end the war. They just weren't.
I got that, but the things he does are just so appalling. And why won't he agree to the security guarantees? Why does he want to like dangle it and say, well, you give me what I want first, and then maybe I'll give you what you want? And you're saying we should assume he will because he has economic interests. But why should we trust Trump?
Right, let Cliff answer that.
I'll answer that because when you say a security guarantee, what do you mean? You mean that American troops are going to come in and defend?
No,
Ukraine? What does it mean?
Maybe it's promising to continue to give them weapons, but some kind of assurance rather than just trust me.
By the way, that security guarantee was given in 1994 in the Budapest memo. He already has that.
Yeah, I want to say I was in the government and was part of the American government that gave that security assurance. I think it was the right thing to do. I think we needed to implement it more than we did.
And I'm not sure. By the way, I'm not sure the Ukrainians think they did it. They made a good deal then by giving up their nuclear weapons in exchange for that security guarantee.
Right. Rachel, thank you for coming in. I appreciate all the questions. David, welcome, and tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
Hey, I'm in Northeast Texas. The left is kind of seasoned on this point that Trump made about going through something with Putin from the Russia collusion hoax. And I heard on Fox earlier, they were talking about how, you basically using it as like Trump's in Putin's, he's in his camp on this thing. I'm just wondering if they're ever going to stop with this Russia collusion stuff. I mean, it's been proven that was a fake or a hoax, I guess, or information warfare campaign. So, do you think that this is, I mean,
Cliff,
my question is, go ahead.
Well, Cliff,
I was just saying, my question is, do you think it'll ever stop?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one thing that could help it stop. Cliff, why does Donald Trump continue to say very nice things about Vladimir Putin?
There are two possibilities, and it seems to me. The possibility that I hope is wrong is that, again, he thinks he can pry Putin away from the axis of aggressors, away from Xi Jinping and Ayatollah Khamenei, and make Putin some kind of ally of the U.S. That's not possible. The more likely, and the one that I'm more hopeful of, is he thinks, look, I'm not making Putin look like a loser among his friends and colleagues. I'm not making him look like he's giving in. I'm making it look, I'm showing him the respect he wants and needs to stay in power. And then when I turn to him and say, hey, but we all agree, right, that there's got to be peace, I would call it cessation of hostilities, which again, Putin may want anyway. Putin say, yeah, I'll give you that. And after that, I don't care what's on paper. It's a matter of what weapons are on the ground on which side of the borders.
Right. I agree with Cliff. David, the answer to your question is Trump could help by stop saying nice things about Putin, and no, they'll never stop. All right, let's play a couple sound bites that have occurred while we've been on the air. First, this is Donald Trump talking to the press before he got on the helicopter at Andrews about his analysis of the meeting. Roll that, please.
Had a meeting today, as you know, with President Zelensky, and I would say it didn't work out exactly great from his standpoint. I think he very much overplayed his hand. We're looking for peace. We're not looking for somebody that's going to sign up a strong power and then not make peace because they feel emboldened, and that's what I saw happening. I'm looking for peace. We're not looking to go into a 10-year war and play games. We want peace. And it was just my impression that if we do that, if we sign up, he's looking for something that I'm not looking for. He's looking to go on and fight. We're looking to end the death. 2,000 people died this week. Soldiers, more than that, but 2,000 approximately people died this week. Young Ukrainians and Russians. And somebody would say, why do you care about Ukraine and Russian soldiers? I care about them. I care about everybody. And we're not doing that. Now, if we don't do anything, he's going to have to make peace, but he's dealing with a very weak set of cards. If we sign, he's dealing with a very strong set of cards, and that he doesn't want to make peace. So that's where we are. It's very simple. I'm not looking to get into anything protracted. I want immediate peace. President Putin is going to want to make, and he wants to end it. And you saw what I saw today. This is a man that wants to get us signed up and keep fighting, and we're not doing that. Not for this country.
Dad, your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the solution is obviously to agree to all the things at once. The president is saying he doesn't want to agree to the ceasefire before he gets the mineral deal. And Zelensky is saying he doesn't want to do the mineral deal before he gets the commitments of the Americans to provide troops, to provide other kinds of support, to encourage the other NATO countries to send troops into Ukraine. So the solution, and I don't understand why it can't be done, is to agree to it all at once.
But Mort, this question for you: doesn't the security? I fear that a security guarantee to Zelensky means that, if necessary, American troops will be deployed to fight the Russians, and Trump has clearly ruled that out. What can a security guarantee otherwise mean, other than what was in the Budapest memorandum that you were in government when it was signed?
The permanent presence of NATO troops.
NATO is not going to. Trump is not going to. He's not going to make Ukraine a NATO member.
No, they're not NATO troops. They're troops of NATO member countries.
Yeah.
In Ukraine, that they have a sovereign
seems
right
like the
to
British.
do.
Seems like the British are willing to do it.
Yeah, I'm saying,
as peacekeepers, not as NATO members, as peacekeepers. And I think that's not a security guarantee specifically, but it provides a tripwire, because if those British troops get killed.
But we can also give a verbal security guarantee.
The verbal security guarantee would be what Starmer has offered or suggested, which is British troops as peacekeepers once there is a ceasefire. Ceasefire follows.
Let me ask you a question. If that happened, U.S. Extraction teams are in there taking minerals. British troops are there. Do Western investors go in? Is there a rebuilding of the Ukrainian economy? Is George Soros and the like rich Republicans, like, is everybody that, because Putin's far less likely to go in if you've got the equivalent of like BlackRock, somebody says, like, isn't that what would happen? And wouldn't that be a form of deterrence in and of itself?
Yes,
all these Western troops, Western investment.
Yes, it's a tripwire. Right.
Yeah. All right. Let's play. This is Zelensky with Brett Baer again for just a little while ago, refusing to apologize. Play that, please.
President Trump said after your meeting that you disrespected him and the vice president and all of America in the Oval Office. Do you think you did? And do you think you owe an apology to President Trump?
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you for the invitation for this dialogue, and good evening to all your country, to all Americans. I'm very thankful to Americans for all your support. You did a lot. I'm thankful to President Trump and to Congress bipartisan support. And I was always very thankful from all our people. You helped us a lot from the very beginning during 3 years of full-scale innovation. You helped us to survive. Anyway, we are strategic partners. And even in such tough dialogue, and I think we have to be very honest. And we have to be very direct to understand each other, because it's very, for us, very necessary to President Trump. And I'm with all respect that he wants to finish this war, but nobody wants to finish more than we, because we in Ukraine, we are in this war, we are in this battle, and battle for freedom for our lives. So I'm just telling that I think that we have to be on the same side, and I hope that the president on our side together with us, and that is very important to stop Putin. And I heard from President Trump a lot of times that he will stop the war, and I hope he will, and we need to pressure him with Europe, with all the partners. And I think this dialogue had to be a little bit earlier to understand where we are. like, you know, I don't remember exactly, but like President Reagan said that peace is not just an absent the war. Yes, we're speaking about just and lasting peace, about freedom, about justice, about human rights. And that's why I said that I think so, that ceasefire, and you know Putin, he broken 25 times ceasefire during all these years, 10 years.
So I'm not hearing from you, Mr. President, a thought that you owe the president an apology.
No, I respect President and I respect American people. And if, I don't know, if I think that we have to be very open and very honest. And I'm not sure that we did something bad. I think maybe sometimes some things we have to discuss out of media, with all respect to democracy and to a free media. But there are things that where we have to understand the position of Ukraine and Ukrainians. And I think that is the most important thing. Yes, we are partners. You know, we are very close partners. We have to be fair. We have to be very free.
Let me just say one thing before I bring in another guest of the community. And I say this with respect to both of you who live inside the swamp. Cliff, how long you lived inside the swamp?
I don't know, 30 years or so, maybe
30
more.
years. And Dad, you've lived inside the swamp since 1967 without interruption. We barely discuss a big thing that's motivating the president and J.D. Vance, which is tens of millions of Americans do not want to spend another dollar in Ukraine. You guys have a Council on Foreign, and I say this with respect to both of you. You have a Council of Foreign Relations posture here, which is pay any price, bear any burden. We must stop Putin.
Can I just point out that I did address it in the following way. Less than 3%, I think 2.8% of our defense budget has been going over the past 3 years to Ukraine. That is the best defense investment we have made for the U.S.
I understand, but that's like saying, and you know I'm saying this with respect, that's like saying it's only $28 million to put on Sesame Street in Nicaragua, right?
So let me,
Americans, tens of millions of Americans have said, this guy is corrupt, he's not going to win, let Putin have the Russian-speaking parts of Ukraine, because we've spent enough there.
Let me grant you that and say that the way that we want back the money we have spent, even though I think it's a good investment, we can get it. And the way to get it is to have a deal for natural resources in Ukraine that are so far untapped. And what you're just saying and what I'm just saying is what Zelensky had to realize and therefore say, my goal is to get the signature of Donald Trump on a document that makes Ukraine and America economic partners. There's more I'd like, but this is what I can achieve today. And I think you and I agree on this.
Let me just say, our job is not to try to reflect just what we guess is the majority view of the American people, but to say what we think the United States needs to do to protect its security. You know, a majority of Americans believed exactly that before World War I, before World War II. And so we sat on the sidelines, let things happen until we eventually got dragged into a much larger war. And that's the question. The question for me is not what's the majority vote at the moment. The question is, what is this a historical situation like before World War II, or are we facing an opponent who doesn't have ending objectives and a willingness to use force to pursue them? And that's the question in a democracy. You don't just count the votes and then decide to do it. You debate what is necessary for our security.
Sam, are you calling us from the Free Republic of Texas tonight?
Yes, indeed.
Welcome in, sir. What's on your mind?
I just happened to be working today, and I don't usually, have the audio on the news while I'm working, but I happened to be on during this during that press conference, and just to me, the utter disrespect of the highest seat, the highest office in our country was just, it infuriated me. I'm an immigrant. I've been here for 19 years, half my life in the country I was born and half my life here in the United States. I love this country. I would do anything for this country. And to see the president, the office of the president, be disrespected by someone who's coming to us hat in hand, asking for help while our tax dollars, and no disrespect to you, Cliff, but Yeah, 2.5%, 3%. We're all filing our income taxes right now from 2024, and every single penny counts. And there can be a justification for dollars spent abroad for different reasons. There's different strategic reasons and so forth. But to see a man come to our country, to the Oval Office, and show such disrespect was just appalling.
Sam, is it the overall, was it his body language? Are there moments you're pointing to?
You know, before the whole kerfuffle, his body language was I mean, his kind of rolling his eyes and his arms crossed. I mean, you do not have to be a professional body language expert to see that. I mean, it was almost like in the same way that, you know, like Nancy Pelosi, when her and Trump and I forget who else it was in 2017 had that whole thing. You know, at least domestically, they're looking for viral moments, and this is all inside of our family. But when someone from outside comes in and does that kind of thing and is playing into our internal politics, and he's been doing it for the past at least for the past 6 months during the election cycle, but to do it in the Oval Office, I just found to be absolutely disrespectful. And then, of course, the whole thing started to fall apart. And I was grateful for JD Vance really stepping up and saying something.
Thank you, Sam. Dad, what do you think at that point?
I think that Trump told us that he set him up, and that's what he did. Trump knew that was going to happen, and he didn't have to have the meeting in public. In fact,
I'm sorry,
you would have a very short press, and then you would go into a private conversation. And
if I could, I think someone else had pointed out yesterday or today that Keir Starmer came in, even Justin Trudeau, who we know hates Donald Trump, wouldn't get goaded into that kind of interaction.
Yeah, Sam, hold on a second. Cliff, quick reply to what Sam said.
Sam, what you're saying reconfirms what my impression, which was that Zelensky had a mission today and he failed in that mission. And but one other thing I would just say to you, because I think it's important to know, is that most of the money that we have spent for Ukraine, we've spent here in the U.S. making new weapons while giving the old weapons to Ukraine. And what we've woken up to the fact that we don't have the defense industrial base we need going forward right now. And to the extent we have, that's good, because now we can start to create it. We have to be able to create javelins and ATACMS, and not just 3 or 4 a year, more shipbuilding, which Trump is doing. So what you said reconfirms what I thought, but I do want you to know it's not just sending pallets of cash over. It's not that at all. It's jobs in American factories, and we need more of those factories and more of those American jobs, because we need more weapons than we have, given the threats we face right now from Russia, China, Iran.
Sam, I'm sorry. Sam, no, I'm sorry. We got to go. I apologize. Thank you for coming in. We got to quit. I'm very grateful to Cliff May for coming in. Morton Halperin, Dad, thank you for both coming. Hope you'll come back. And we may come to special over the weekend, but otherwise we'll see you Monday morning, 9 a.m. for the morning meeting. I'm very grateful to all of you for joining tonight and participating in our normal peace, love, and understanding fashion. Thank you, Cliff. Thank you, Dad. Have a good night. Good weekend, everybody.
Thank you, Mark. Good to see you.